Every spring or early summer, people phone up the Barn Owl Trust and say, I found an owl when I was out walking in the woods. They describe it and it's almost always a young tawny owl. So this video is going to explain to you exactly what to do if you find a young tawny owl. And for this purpose, we're going to use one that was found very recently. The fact that this young tawny owl is out of the nest already is not a problem. Tawny owls go through a long phase, at least a month, called branching, where the young are out of the nest, they can't fly, they just climb around in the branches and some of them end up on the floor. That's fine because the adults will feed them anywhere, unlike barn owls which are only fed in the nest. So what should we do with this bird? The chances are it's perfectly okay, but it's probably a good idea just to check it over in a very simple way. And if this is an area where dogs walk, you know, people come through, or you think there might be a lot of foxes around or some danger, then perhaps pick the bird up, put it up on a branch. So what's the best way to pick it up? Well, try and come in from behind. If you don't want to use your bare hands, maybe take your jacket off, throw it over the bird. I'm just going to very quietly try and pick it up from behind. I've got to try and keep the feet pointing away. There we are. Look, now it's struggling. Keep the feet pointing away because those are the bits that can hurt you. Okay, so now we're just going to very simply, quickly check it over. Are its wings okay? Nothing obviously broken. It's a bit wet, but tawny owls are quite used to that. You know, they live in the woods, they do get wet regularly and they can generally cope. It's not too thin. Both its eyes look good. It doesn't have a bad smell. It's alert. I think this one's okay. I think we just need to pop it up on a branch and leave it alone. Having checked the owl over, made sure it's okay, it's important not to take it too far because tawny owls are very, very territorial. We just want to find a little place where we can put it up off the ground where it'll be safe from dogs, etc. Let's say you're walking past a farm building and suddenly there's an owlet, a young owl on the floor. What should you do? Well, if it's a barn owl, you really must pick it up because this bird will die. A fox will have it or it'll be ignored by the parents and it will starve. This young barn owl has got to be put back in the nest. So you're going to pick it up. So how are you going to do it? Well, if you've got a pair of gloves with you, perfect. But of course you won't have. You could take off an item of clothing, throw it over the bird to help to pick it up, but you can use your bare hands as long as you pick it up from behind. So here we go. I'm putting my hands around both the wings. I'm keeping the feet pointing away from me. If the bird has got its feet pointing towards you, give it something to grip and then put your hands around the body, hold both the wings, maybe make a ring, put the ring around there. You've got the bird safely. Now, obviously you've got to contain it while you find the nest, talk to the local farmer, etc. This one actually needs to go back in the nest right now. And here, someone's come across an adult barn owl on the ground. Any owl that will let you approach it is either very young or there's something wrong with it. It needs to be picked up and examined. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to check over an owl to see whether it's injured or possibly starving. We know there's something wrong with it because it's allowed itself to be picked up. So before we actually start to handle it, a good idea to look at it in the box. You can learn a lot about its condition just by really what it's doing. So some birds will present lying down. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, could be a reaction to stress. Sometimes the bird's lying on one side. If it's lying on its back, that's obviously not a good sign. Sometimes as soon as you get close to the bird you realise there's a really, really bad smell, and that's a very bad sign. An owl shouldn't have a strong smell. If there's a really foul smell, it's probably got an old injury, potentially with maggots in. That's quite disgusting. So hopefully there's no really bad smell. You can look in the box and see if there's a pellet. You know, owls produce pellets if they've eaten recently, so that's a good sign that it's been feeding. So it might mean the injury is fresh, might mean the bird's not starving. So look for droppings, hopefully they're black or white, and not green, which isn't a good sign. So basically just have a look before you decide to pick the bird up. Okay, so thin leather gloves are ideal. If you don't have gloves with you and you have to pick a bird up, then throw a towel over it or something, as I showed you before, and always try and pick it up from behind, but more importantly, try and control the legs. So here we are. Look, we've immediately got control of both wings and both legs, and the key thing about the hold is to keep control of the legs, keep the feet pointing away from you. Okay, you can't really do a good check with gloves on, so once you've got control of the feet, it's a good idea to remove the gloves. If the bird starts to struggle, you can calm it down just by covering the face. You could use a little flannel for that, or a little bit of towel or something. Now, when a bird is starving, its breastbone is very protrusive. So there's what we call the keel, the bone running down the center of the chest here. It shouldn't stick up above the breast muscle either side more than a couple of millimeters, really. If it's very, very protrusive, you know, it's sticking up a good 5 millimeters, that means the bird's emaciated, it hasn't got very much breast muscle, and it's starving. So the initial part of the check really is just to run your finger down the chest of the bird and feel the amount of breast muscle either side of the breastbone, the keel. And then run your finger off the bottom of the chest and onto the stomach. Remembering, of course, that owls don't have a crop, so there's no point checking to see if the bird's got food in its crop. So you're running your finger down into the stomach, and that is a hollow cavity. So that says to me this bird hasn't eaten very recently. There's nothing there. I can't feel any food or a pellet. If the bird is cold to the touch, if it's also wet perhaps, obviously that's a bad sign. You're going to have to warm it up fairly fast. Okay, so once we've established how emaciated or not the bird is, whether it's got food in its stomach, then we're really starting the general checking over process. The most common injury with owls are wing fractures. So we're going to start by looking for broken bones in the wing. We can spread the wing, we can look at the feathers, see whether they look like any of them are broken. Sometimes you have birds where there's a really obvious injury. As soon as you spread the wing, you can see, you know, something that's obviously not right. Don't ever expect to see a lot of blood. Birds don't contain very much blood compared to mammals. So now we're feeling the bones. This is the humerus, the upper arm bone, if you like. The human equivalent would be your upper arm. We're feeling the bone there to see if there's any fractures. We're feeling the joint, the elbow joint, to see if there's any unusual movement. You're feeling also for wet patches where there might be some blood. You're feeling down the forearm, if you like, the radius and ulna, and then the carpal joint, feeling for unusual movement. This is all looking very, very good. We can see, by the way, this is spotty, so this is a female. It's rather nice. Same check on the other side. Now, if you're not experienced, then it's very useful to compare one side with the other. If they're very different, then obviously that suggests there's something wrong. Of course, if you're not confident about doing this, you've really got to get the bird to a vet. But a lot of vets actually aren't very experienced with birds. You've got to choose your vet carefully. So we're checking again the upper arm, the forearm, as it were, the wrist joint, the carpal joint is the technical term, and that all looks very, very good. Now we're going to check the legs in a similar way. So we release one leg at a time, keep hold of the other one. Remember, the feet are the dangerous bit, so keep the feet pointing away from you. So we're checking the thigh, as it were, is right up here, and then this is the shin. The ankle in birds is very long, so this entire part of the leg here is actually the ankle. That all looks very good. You can see whether the bird's toes are reacting normally. Lack of movement might indicate a spinal injury, something wrong with the nervous system. We do the same on the other side. Check these bones. Everything looks good. All right. So now we're going to have a quick look at the back passage of the bird just to make sure everything's looking clean. If it's got an internal problem, It may be what's called scouring. There may be some foul, kind of chalky, foul-smelling substance around the back passage. This bird looks very clean, so that's a good sign as well. Another really good indication of the bird's bodily condition is its weight. So you could perhaps weigh an empty box, put the bird in the box, weigh the box with the bird, work out how many grams it is. You can find out the starvation weights and the normal weights of owls on the Barn Owl Trust website. Okay, so we've checked the breast, the stomach, the wings, the legs. Now we need to look at the head area. So we're going to look at the eyes first. Now this bird's got its eyes open, which is actually very, very unusual. Wild birds normally present with the eyes closed, and you have to actually open the eye. And it's easy with this one. So you can see there the eyeball looks superb. It's a lovely dark brown colour. It's very bright. There's no discharge. The eye hasn't collapsed, as you sometimes see if there's a serious injury. Let's look at the left eye now. Yep, that looks very good too. No worries there. And now we're going to check inside the beak. So we bring our hand down, we grab the upper mandible, carefully open the beak. Don't open it any wider than that. It's about 20 millimeters at the front. It's plenty wide enough. There is an infection that owls can get, which is very, very serious, which causes yellow lesions in the gape. This bird looks pink. Lovely pink gape, that all looks very, very healthy. Very occasionally the upper mandible becomes dislocated from the skull, so we can just check to see if there's any unusual movement there. That all looks good. And whilst we're in this area, we're going to check the ear openings. Now you might wonder why. If the bird has had a blow to the head, you quite often will find blood in the ear openings. Now the ear openings are situated just behind the eyes. Don't worry if the ear openings look different. That's part of the anatomy of the owl. But they shouldn't have any discharge. They should be a nice healthy colour and nice and dry. When you're checking over an owl, as soon as you find something wrong, you need to be thinking, can I deal with this? If the bird shows signs of just a very slight concussion, perhaps you can't find anything wrong with it, you can deal with it. You can release it where you found it, perhaps, or nearby tonight. But as soon as you find something you can't deal with, perhaps stop checking it over, put it in a safe container and find a vet who's experienced with birds. And please don't forget to record exactly where the bird was picked up, the finding circumstances and also any treatment you might have given it, and make sure those details go with the bird to the vet or the rehabilitator that's going to take it on. On the Barn Owl Trust website, you can find a directory of people who take in injured owls across the UK. You can find more information on the Barn Owl Trust website, and if you'd like to make a donation to support this work, that would be wonderful.